the size of the trunk. This was the only day I have to say that it rained for us. We had fabulous weather. We were really blessed. But it did rain this day, but it was only a very light rain, so we were very blessed. So this is just a recreation of what life would have been like during Jesus' time in the first century. It's built up, and we have this image in our head of what, first century. And it's not really like that. But at least they were able to do this for you, so you could have some kind of visual. And it was nice to hear that they really did not touch the terrain. This is probably what a first century tomb, probably something very similar to what Jesus would have been in, looked like. The terrain here, this was untouched since the first century.
This was one of my favorite. A lot of people thought this was cheesy, right? Because it was like a reenactment.
Yeah.
But for me, I was very touched by this because our little guide showed us things like the donkey, or there was some sheep, or they showed us what the yoke looked like, where they put and then so all of the parables that Jesus used, spilling on rocky ground, right? See, every parable that he told, he used because this is where he grew up. He grew up with yoke, he grew up with donkeys, he grew up with sheep, right? I'm the sheep, the shepherd. And to me, it really made, because I'm always focused on teaching, I said, well, no wonder, because I wouldn't teach using the word yoke. I would teach using the word iPod, right? Because I would have to teach with something that made sense today. And that's why so all the parables make more sense when you are walking through this somewhat, it's not cheesy, but to me, I was like, wow, Jesus was an awesome teacher. And we should emulate that by trying to make vivid descriptions of things from our own childhood, because it makes more sense.
Mount Precipice, and if you recall this story, it was where Jesus angered the congregants in the synagogue. This is about 2 miles south of Nazareth, and this is where the congregants got so agitated with him they wanted to hurl him off the cliff. Remember that passage? I think it's in Luke 4 somewhere. And they wanted to hurl him off the steep hill. So this is the traditional site for that. The tradition says that Jesus was saved by leaping from this mountain. I don't recall reading that. Actually, I did look it up because he disappeared from their midst. And actually, in Luke, Luke says that Jesus passed through the crowd. So, again, tradition, some of these things seem like, okay, so now we move on to Cana. And Cana is not too far from Nazareth, and this is the beautiful Franciscan wedding church, which was built in 1879, where couples come to renew their wedding vows. So this is the upper church. Now below is crypt. Again, there's another, a lot of these churches, they have an upper and then the crypt lower, and as Shannon pointed out, it's because things were built lower and then they were just built up upon. So this lower part of the church includes the wine press, plastered cisterns, and vessels from various dates. This one that we're looking at is the top of what is believed to be the replica of one of the original 6 jars of the miracle that Jesus turned the water into wine. And this is a side view. It's encased. It's in the glass encasement. And these are other vessels and artifacts that are in the same area of the replica. So this is an actual first century boat that was, this was found by 2 brothers from a kibbutz not too far from Magdala. And they found it in 1986. So it wasn't that long ago, by two brother fishermen. And there must have been a great big drought because this boat just surfaced and it was pulled from the mud, pulled out of the mud, but it took 12 days and 12 nights to extract this out of the mud, and then it had to be submerged in a chemical bath for 7 years. Because you think about wood, it's pretty incredible that this would even stay from, how many years are we talking, 2,000 years, it'd still be wood. So this apparently sunk to the bottom of the lake, the sea, So it kind of was preserved from that regard. So it was a very, very delicate process to, get this out of the water and to preserve it. This is the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter. And this is where Jesus made his reinstatement of Peter as the church authority. If you will remember the passages, feed my sheep. I tell you, Peter, that on this rock I will build my church, and Hades will not overcome. And this is, again, another Franciscan chapel, which was built in 1933 and was part of the 4th century church from St. Helena. And this is also the place where Jesus had breakfast with his disciples on this big rock called Mensa Christa, or Table of Christ. Also on the Sea of Galilee, and that is the chapel, the Franciscan church. And you can see the sand, black sand with black stone.
So that's the stuff that I'm sending around?
Yeah.
There, it's coming from that, right? That Lorraine collected, you'll see now you know what you're looking at. Because that picture will help.
This was also an area that really touched me. I loved the Sea of Galilee because it did have such a feeling of untouched. When you get to Jerusalem, there's so many sights and sounds, and it's kind of hard to see through all that, but I can envision Jesus being here, having breakfast with the disciples, and reinstating Peter as the church authority. Also this area, because of, it's also called the Seven Springs, and because of the water being a little warmer here in the springs, entering the lake here, fishing has always been a good spot here. And the tradition says that probably this might have been the place where Jesus found his disciples mending their nets, maybe collecting their fish, their day's catch. So this might be actually where he called them too. So Capernaum was a wealthy Jewish town during Roman times. And as we all know, it was the center of Jesus' ministry and where most of his miracles occurred. And they believe for about 1.5 years Jesus' ministry was headquarters right here in Capernaum in Peter's home. So this is the a modern Franciscan church that we visited, and it stands right over Peter's house. And you can see in the middle here, right here, is a glass floor where you can see below, you can look down upon the ruins of Peter's home. So you can see St. Peter's house, and also the remains of an early synagogue is on the site. It was from back in the 1st century, and probably where Jesus preached as well and taught. A picture of that. Here's another one that's looking down at St. Peter's house. And here's the modern church on top, and this is, now I'm outside, that was inside looking down, and now when you leave the church, you can actually see it from down. So this, I believe one time this, again, was a Byzantine chapel that was put over here, but this is probably where St. Peter lived with his mother-in-law. This might have been the bedroom, or portions of it. Remnants of the synagogue. And here's Jeff teaching here at this, again, it's a wealthy town here. So you look at that beautiful remains of the synagogue. You see a lot of limestone, a lot of intricate designs here, very elaborate, with soaring columns, inscribed pillars. This is, probably maybe Jesus was standing right where Jeff is standing back at that time. Who knows? Absolutely love this. So this is called, again, Mount Beatitudes Church, and it's in Byzantine style, shocking surprise, and it's in an octagonal shape to represent the 8 Beatitudes. And it overlooks the Sea of Galilee from above Capernaum. Fabulous. When I was taking this picture, there was 2 men, there's a log over here, I can't really see it, they were sitting down right here, and they were chatting just conversationally, and I could hear them.
Wow.
Yeah. So I said, this has to be, or it has to be the spot. I could just picture Jesus somewhere right here, maybe right into this tree. Or there's the Sea of Galilee, he preached a lot from the boat too, right? And we all know voices travel over water. So perhaps maybe Jesus was preaching from here, and people were all up here on this mountainside. Jesus announced Peter's authority, and he said, on this rock, you will build a church, right? And he asked Peter, who do you say that I am, right, the 3 times. And Peter replies, you are the Christ, the Son of the living. And again, everything was in honor of Caesar, so it was called Caesarea Philippi. And on the cliffs here, let's see, there's a cave where some of the sacrifices and pagan worship went on. There's a stream, it's an imposing rock cliff, if you can see it up here, where water would flow through here that helped form part of the Jordan River. It's actually the chapel that we had daily mass here. You can see there's some angels here on the right. Beautiful stained glass here, which I think I have a picture of right here. Some beautiful peacocks. There's all that intricate work. And a close-up of the angels. This is the lower crypt, but on the top of this crypt up here is a beautiful mosaic of Jesus. And again, it was an upper church, and it had a crypt, just like every church, almost every church has, below. And below was 2 chapels to the right and to the left. So almost shaped like a cross, Jesus at the top, Moses and Elijah to the right and to the left. So what it was signifying is Jesus up in heaven and Moses and Elijah, earth. So up here, the early Christians identified this rock right here as actually where the transfiguration took place. So this is really not necessarily a holy site, but this is remains of Roman civilization, which was housed about 10,000 people. It was a city. So the remains of an amphitheater was very, very, very impressive, very well preserved. Lots. So here, there's amphitheater, bathhouses, storefronts, paved streets. Let's see, look at this. There was 18 successive ancient towns here. So now we're at the Jordan River. You can see Bob Sesko over there.
Yeah.
So the Jordan River does border between Syria and Lebanon, and it flows south, north it goes to the Sea of Galilee, and it exits and goes south, dividing Israel and the West Bank. And then it empties out into the Dead Sea. That's where it eventually goes. All right, so now we're moving on to Bethlehem. So this is the Jerusalem cross. This is the top of the Church of Nativity. The Church of Nativity is shared by the Greek Orthodox, Armenians, and of course the Roman Catholic Church. And it is one of the oldest surviving churches in Israel. I had to take this picture. I just love the sizes. Anybody see anything that they don't normally would see in a nativity scene here? Okay, so now we are in the Church of Nativity, and this is where things, for me, was very difficult to kind of really envision, the stable, the place where Jesus was born, with all this pomp and stance. This is the Greek Orthodox, right before we go into the grotto, and they have a big presence here in the Greek Orthodox, and they love their chandeliers and their lanterns and their ornateness. It's beautiful. This is behind the altars, so beautiful gold filigree.
Christmas Eve.
This was their Christmas Eve, right? This was their Christmas Eve. A lot of scaffolding. The whole church was is under reconstruction. Unfortunately, we saw a lot of that. Also, the Church of Holy Sepulchre too was under construction. This as well. Let's see. Let's go here. So to the left here. So now we're at the door of humility. We're about to go into the stable, just to experience Jesus' birth. And this is a small rectangular entrance, which was built during the Ottoman era, and it was really just to prevent things like carts and people driving through here, on their horses or whatever, looters, and also just to have a sense of decorum and spirituality because you're entering into a very sacred and holy place. So this is the star, and this is the traditional spot where Jesus' birth, where he was born. And you see again all the ornateness with the lanterns, the lights. Because this is shared by the 3 denominations, the lanterns, let's see if I have this, 15 of them. There's 15 lamps, and 6 of them are for the Greeks, 5 are for Armenians, and 4 are for the Catholics. That's just another piece of the altar to actually see the nativity scene. And this is the manger, which this is the chapel of the Roman Catholics. They have ownership of this. And really there's nothing left of it because of the fire. I think there might be somewhere inside, we really couldn't see it. I think maybe along these walls here are some remnants from the 12th century fragments of wall mosaics.
No, the Jews in New York like Chinese food.
This is Shepherd's Fields overlooking the
Wow.
fields, the beautiful church inside. We actually saw women, I think they were Armenians, and the acoustics were absolutely beautiful. They sang in here, they sounded like angels, just like the angels heralding in the good news of Jesus. So this is the actual Palm Sunday Road. Those walls were built at a different century because they were not there during Jesus' time, but these pieces were here. So that's kind of what it looked like. It was more of like level pavement, on both sides. So that's remnants during Jesus' time.
It was steep.
And it was very steep. Yeah, you could see from the Garden of Gethsemane. There's 8 olive trees here, and they do believe that these are descendants of original trees back in Jesus' time, because you can cut down an olive tree, but the roots will sprout up and they just continue to grow. But this is the Holy Sepulchre. This is actually walking up the stairs to Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified. And this is one of the stations where Jesus was nailed. So this is run by the Roman Catholics. There's a little chapel here. This is the actual crucifixion right here. Very difficult to see. The Greek Orthodox run this area here. They love their lanterns and their chandeliers. And it's hard to kind of envision. Behind that is a picture of Jesus being crucified up there. But you can actually go there where you asked that question. You can see the person underneath there. I'm going to have it here too. You can go underneath there. There's actually a hole that you can put your hand in and touch the rock itself. A little chapel right next to where Jesus was crucified, where Mary wept. This is the crack. This is the crack in the Rock of Golgotha for the earthquake. This is the slab of where Jesus was anointed. This is the marble slab. The actual rock is underneath, right underneath that, where they laid Jesus for the anointing. Church of Agony. This was the rock that they believed that Jesus actually wept on and prayed, when he was in the garden. You can see it's kind of, they put a crown of thorns around it. And we had Mass here. We had Mass that here. The church itself, absolutely exquisite. This was my favorite church. Just outstanding, just beautiful. This was outside the Garden of Gethsemane, where they believed the disciples slept while Jesus prayed. This is the upper room where Jesus' Last Supper. You're welcome. That's okay, go to the upper room. It was called the Wailing Wall because the temple was destroyed, and Jewish people from all over come here and pray and lament over the destruction in 70 AD. And you can put there, there's me. Yeah. You can see in the back, we put, I know I put up a couple of prayers somewhere over here, and whatever cracks you could find. Again, we very much appreciated that the Israelis take these papers and burn them. This is the church. Where are we now? We are now St. Peter in Gallicantu. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. But this is where Jesus was tried by the high priest Matthias. This is where he came. This is a French. And this is the underground caves where Jesus spent the night, that sacred night when he was in prison. Actually, you'll see some of these caves. It was very dark down here. Of course, there's lighting now for people and pilgrims like us to see, but it was very dark. And really, those steps weren't there. The steps here, these weren't there. So a person would have to be lowered here on a rope to get down the pit. It's a very dark, large pit. So imagine Jesus being in that, by himself, being abandoned by his disciples, his friends. And
he went through that night in that area.
I know. A lot of us don't think of that. So that would have been the hole that he would have descended from.
Oh, my goodness.
And just think about him, being abandoned and then alone and dark, cold, damp.
Yeah, we saw them right
That more than likely Jesus took these steps as he was being tried and came up to the high priest's area.
They did a lot of climbing.
See? Oh yes, that's why they wanted to sit there. So pretty. It's called the Church of the Visitation.
Oh.
And it's Mary, when Mary visited Elizabeth, right? This was a summer home of John the Baptist's parents, Mary and Zechariah. Beautiful monuments. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
Came out too good. There's beautiful plaques here of the Magnificat
That's the
in all
Magnificat,
all different languages, right? And here's ours in English.
Oh, that is
It's just a beautiful mosaic, and here's the church itself. This was an ancient cistern more than likely used by John's family and probably Mary herself. There was a rock that is believed that when Herod was killing all the infants under 2 years old, that Elizabeth hid John behind so that he escaped being killed too, because John was young too. And we had daily mass here. It's a National Museum of Mosaics from all over the state of Israel, the country of Israel. And here's the Dead Sea. And this always amazed me. So here's the sea. This is Qumran, where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, that's here. It was found by Bedouin, two
Doesn't
boys.
it just look like where Osama bin Laden was hiding?
Yeah, it kind of does, right?
It's
As a
all like
close-up
that,
view.
very cavey and dry.
It contains 30% salt water and minerals.
Right.
And that's 10 times more than the average ocean. So that's why we're all floating. You can't sink, you float. And here we are now, the Via Dolorosa. So we're doing the Way of Sorrows, where Jesus, walked to Golgotha. And it was very solemn, very prayerful. Although you can see in the background, but you know what? This is really Jesus' time too. A lot of the merchants, hecklers are going along the way. No different for us too. People hustle and bustle. Certainly far from being quiet. Holy Sepulchre. This is the top of Holy Sepulchre. This is a menorah, that beautiful. This is, I think, either the city of David or right in the outskirts of the city of David, solid gold. It's 24. I wrote it down. I don't know how old it is, but it's 24 karat. It's worth $7 million. And it means the menorah bringing light into the world, the light of God into the world. And this is an up close of the Rock of the Dome. I think it's right in the outskirts of the city of David. This is ruins that they found not too long ago. They think was storehouses and part of King David's castle,
They're still
his
digging.
palace. They're still digging. They're always digging.
Digging.
Yeah, city of David. Yeah, city of David. They believe that this is some kind of royal an image that only a royalty would have in their home. So that's why they speculate that these ruins here were part of King David's palace. And this is part of it. Their villages and their towns and their water supply, because that's the first thing that they would do. They would siege the water supply because no one could survive without water. So they built this marble, this tunnel. And look at how deep it goes down. Tiny to walk through.
Very narrow
Yeah.
pathway.
Yep. And this is the entrance back. We're back to the Holy Sepulchre. This is getting inside. Here, this is just a little side bit of information. This is the Holy Sepulchre is run by 6 different Christian denominations. You see that little thing right there? That's a ladder. And that's been there since the mid 1700s because they can't decide who owns that ladder. And there's a lot of bickering and argument that goes on between the Greeks, the Armenians, the Roman Catholics, the Latins, the Coptics, the Egyptians. There's 6 of them. And, what's the